Warning, some viewers may find the following footage deeply disturbing.
Genius.
Hey, this is Kurt Wallace. We have Kyle Kemper with us today from Club MAHA. And Kyle, thanks for being with us. I'm excited to interview you. There's a lot that we want to cover, so hopefully we can get it all. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Kurt, and thank you for all you've done getting us to where we are right now. So yeah, let's go. Let's grow.
Likewise. And for those that aren't familiar with Kyle Kemper, you've been involved in kind of liberty-oriented projects for a long time. The recent one was the MAHA tour and the Kennedy RV, and that was a pretty cool experience. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because there's a variety of changes that have happened in terms of the realignment in this country. Surprising realignments for some, exciting, scary for others who really don't understand it or have a lot of misinformation around it. But could we talk a little bit first about your experience with doing this RV tour across America? You're a Canadian, correct? Are you still a Canadian or are you an American at this point?
I call myself a child of the earth. I was born in Canada. I have a Canadian passport, but I'm also a North American, and
Great.
And so I live in America now. I have three U.S. born children. I have two Canadian born children. I have a stepson too. So I've got my amazing wife Brittany,
Mm-hmm.
in early 2023, I saw a video of Bobby Kennedy where I was just like, my gosh, this man is like incredible, and he really it's probably by design, but the video made him look extremely presidential and like also like inferred the confidence that this man knows his stuff. And I was like, it's really, in my opinion, still of my opinion, he's the most qualified man to be president. So as soon as he announced that he was running for president, I recognized like he needs courageous people by his side. I was like, I will operate alongside Bobby and do everything I can to support him because he showed extreme courage and was also speaking light and speaking truth, which are the most important things that one can do, in my opinion.
What are the key things that he was saying that got you on his side?
Really recognizing the state of like the pharmaceutical industry and like, and the loss of rights and liberty and going after Fauci, like, the pandemic was something that or the COVID scenario, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you to the Rand Paul Review community for your support of the Kurt Wallace Show. We are now syndicated on Spotify. For those who are new to Rand Paul Review, become a subscriber today. It's absolutely free to join. Go to randpaulreview.com, put in your email address. You'll receive our newsletter, articles, and podcast interviews. We just ask that you share our content with others. If you like what you're getting from Rand Paul Review and you want more, I encourage you to become a paid subscriber for just $8 a month. You'll receive full access to exclusive articles, behind-the-scenes interviews, and the community chat room. Plus, we're giving away tons of swag in 2025. Annual subscribers get 20% off, so check that out. Whether you're a free or paid subscriber, thank you for your participation and support at randpaulreview.com.
Through the whole COVID scenario, Bobby stood up. He was labeled part of the disinformation dozen, but he spent his entire life being an environmental lawyer and really fighting for the rights of people on our planet and protecting ecosystems, and has such a depth and breadth of knowledge that it's like a modern day Renaissance man. So yeah, that's what kind of attracted me to him. And I was at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and he gave this incredible talk, and I had my RV there, which was the Blockchain Across America bus. And I had a muralist do a big mural of Bobby Kennedy on the side of it. And we converted it into the Kennedy Across America bus. And then we proceeded to do 6, 7, 8 tours over the next year and a half all across America. I even took it up to Canada at one point. And just out there seeing how people how it resonated. And people were tired of the status quo. And I will say there was a lot of love and support from conservatives, libertarians, independents, old school Democrats. There was a lot of negative vitriol from these big Democrats, that these deep state Democrats, and that was kind of expected. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but it was just an eye-opening experience being able to go all over the place. And and then when Bobby ultimately chose to suspend his campaign, I had just been in Chicago for the DNC doing a whole week of unbelievable activations. And and then he declared that he was dropping out and endorsing President Trump. And and then to see his message and his words all of a sudden being heard by the entire MAGA movement, it was really powerful. Like his voice is so powerful, and like the words and the essence of it spread, and these ideas spread, and it elevated the conversation. And his participation in the whole electoral process brought so many topics to the general discourse that otherwise wouldn't have been in play. Like crypto wouldn't have been as big of a thing. Like the health and safety and vaccines and Fauci and the list goes on. The corporate capture and war in Ukraine. I don't know. He just brought a bunch of unique takes, and also catalyzed a lot of people. And he got a lot of people who were disassociated and disengaged from the process to get more engaged. And it was a magnet for incredible talent and people. So when Bobby ends up endorsing Trump, a lot of people went through their little motions of some were hurt, some were stoked, some were shattered, but it took a little bit of time. But ultimately, we all came around, and then now there's this huge mass of people like Nicole Shanahan, for example. She had been funding, Soros appointed picks back in the day, and then she realized that the pharmaceutical industry were responsible for the poisoning of her child and her severe vaccine related autism, from vaccine injury. And then the wool started just pulling off. She had been told Bobby Kennedy's a quack, stay away from this guy. And then she started listening to him. Was like, this guy's not a quack, this guy's incredible. And so she committed everything. And she's just an amazing example of of recognizing, wow, they said all this crap about Bobby Kennedy. Maybe they said the same thing about Trump. And oh, guess what? It's true. They sowed a whole bunch of lives in this parallel reality universe where people are trapped in this Trump derangement syndrome, thinking he's this just evil villain when it really isn't. And once the blinders get taken off, people can kind of appreciate that. And so anyways, now with Bobby, with MAHA, and this Make America Healthy Again, and him, being the director of HHS, a bigger budget than the Pentagon, has the opportunity to make America healthy again and actually get to work. Had he become president, the president is a very ceremonial position, and and it's kind of a showman position as well. I know no better showman than kind of Trump. And so he is uniquely outfitted to be an amazing president, so long as he has excellent people behind him. And it feels like this go around, he has incredible people behind him, from Bobby Kennedy to Kash Patel to Tulsi Gabbard to Rand Paul to all through the list, to Elon Musk in getting involved. We are going through a political realignment, a societal, a civilization realignment right now. And it's very exciting.
Well, you talk about Kennedy in a very positive light, but you also mentioned that there are people that have had issues with him. And that's what we're seeing right now, the media and establishment. It seems like now when the media says something about someone negatively, or when they say something, or the established Democrats or establishment Republicans say something negative about somebody, it's It seems like that's the disinformation that's going on, but it's not
Absolutely,
working.
it's an
It's not
endorsement.
working.
It's become an endorsement for that people. When you see the mainstream media railing against somebody, it's like an endorsement because honestly, they just lie and project like it's nobody's business. They present this like this masked
Mhm.
objectivity with incredible subjectivity.
Mhm.
So at least just wear your cards. Like this is the thing. It's like I wish the mainstream media had to dress up like NASCAR drivers, just wearing all the fucking logos, if you know what I mean.
That would be great. And so you mentioned HHS has a larger budget than the Pentagon. That doesn't make any sense. Why is that the case?
CDC, NIH, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. It's like there's many agencies that all fall under it, and him
Mhm.
being at the top, and then having amazing people, and also like over the course of the last year and a half, like identifying the extreme talent and the really honest, open people that can
Mhm.
come together and solve it. The mainstream media is going to project all this, like, this fear mongering bullshit. They'll never actually debate on any of the topics. They'll just present fear mongering projection because that's what they do. Whereas Bobby will actually get into a lot of the issues. And sure, he's might be a little bit off every now and then, but who isn't? The key thing is he's as long as he is doing his best. And I think we're now that he's confirmed. Um, there's going to be a whole new new agenda, and we're already seeing it it happening in society. I mean, steak like Steak and Shake, or I think that's what it's called in Florida, has switched to tallow frying off of seed
Mhm.
oils. And there's just more awareness coming out. And Bobby's got a mission to turn the healthcare system from the sick care system back into the healthcare system, and to
Mhm.
start actually addressing the root causes of a lot of the systemic illness in America, and the health and the chronic health disease in America, as opposed to the sick care pharmaceutical approach, which is just like recognizing that there's nothing more profitable than a sick child. And frankly, that's
Mhm.
disgusting. And so removing this, as Bobby says, the toxic soup environment that we're operating in, and recognizing that it's a mighty quest. And and this is Bobby asked for a sword to get the work done. And guess what, Bobby? You got your sword, buddy. And we're here beside you. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's make America healthy again. And it seems like, President Trump is also recognizing, like, he's a smart man. He's like, you got this, Bobby. Like, and I think some of the things that have happened recently have given President Trump a little bit more freedom to execute to his highest potential, as opposed to serving others' interests.
Were you surprised that Kennedy and Trump got together? I mean, after watching Kennedy be treated the way he was treated by the Democrats, really, Kennedy could have given Trump a run for his money. He was actually the candidate that could have potentially beat Trump, right? And
Yeah,
they
he could.
aligned
I
together.
mean, he could have. He could have had,
Mhm.
like, in an alternate reality, it's possible that it could have happened, and like that was it. And I always kind of had a feeling that this was one fork in the prophecy, that him and Trump would join forces together, because honestly, having toured around America, there was so much alignment. Like the Republicans, the conservatives, and the libertarians loved Bobby. They didn't like he was underneath a bit of a climate change spell for a while. I think he's woken up to, like, the nonsense of
Oh, really?
climate. But
Really? You
he's
think
also
so?
like he's
Okay.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and Bobby does not, no,
He
he
doesn't talk about
recognizes,
it anymore. I noticed that. He, he's
and climate, like, because the
yeah,
climate, like, how they mess with words, like they turned this
sure.
word climate and climate change. It used to be global warming, then it became climate change, and now it's just climate.
It's
It's
like
like they
taxing the air. It gives the government a chance to tax things that don't have anything to do with anything.
it's radical simplification too. It's like dumbing down very complex ecosystems
Mhm.
into this carbon thing that you can just input a tax and offset and call yourself net zero because you paid for that. And this is just corporate speak. And ultimately, it's like putting a tax that enables more wealth transference, and it creates barriers to entry for new competitors entering to clean up these markets, especially when there's it's heavily subsidized. So
That's a
Bobby's
great point. It's a state corporatism right there. It's just a cloak for government and corporate collusion. Which why doesn't the left, who has been anti-corporate, not liking this guy? This guy has gone after big corporations for decades as an attorney. They just don't know. Maybe.
Well, and the left isn't left anymore. It's now become this hybrid commie fascist nouveau Nazi establishment where they project out everything that they really are. And it's
good point. Yeah, that's a good point, because a classical liberal is a founding father. That would be a libertarian, very conservative, limited government type person is a classical liberal. But you have the freedom of speech, freedom of choice, freedom for health.
There's been a switching, the spectrum, if you will, is honestly it's kind of flipped. But it's all but there's also the Republican Party is not the Republican Party of old. This isn't the neocon party anymore. This is this is there's new energy, there's new vibration to it. It's a higher vibration than that warmongering, extremely big corporate party that it was. And so there's that shift going on, and I think Bobby recognizes that. And Bobby is a study of libertarianism, and he holds a lot of love for Ron Paul and Rand Paul.
Really?
Bobby knows. Oh yeah. I mean, I the first time I met Bobby, I had just been to Jekyll Island on my way up to Cape Cod. I stopped by Jekyll Island to go learn a little bit and just see that mansion. And I was read G. Edward Griffin's Creature of Jekyll Island. And I used to be a 9/11 truther, hardcore. I was a conspiracy theorist asking questions that one was not why are you talking about this kind of stuff? Because it's fucking important and doesn't make sense. So we need to you have to be able to ask questions. Right. Anyways, I told, and Bob was like, "Oh, I love that book. I read that book." He knows. Bobby knows.
Really?
Bobby knows. Oh,
he knows what the Federal Reserve's all about.
Oh yeah, Bobby knows what the Federal Reserve's all about.
That's the head of the dragon right there.
And he has reservations or critiques or concerns about certain pure libertarian ideology, but I think we're not, but it's okay. He at least understands and openly talk about these things, which is great. And so and it's this ferocious, vicious, insidious corporate capture, globalist mega corporate capture. This is not free market. Free market does not lead to super corporatocracy outcome. It just wouldn't. It's just that's not what it is. You need, in order to get to where we are with this insane consolidation and massive power structures and these gigantic super globalist corps, you need subsidies and barriers to entry, and that's what that's why I would say has taken place in a big way. And honestly our cure to MAHA and our cure to the environment is, and honestly, less subsidies, more free market action, because the free market will sort out a lot of these problems, along with challenging people to solve problems and saying we want you to solve problems. Come out, let's solve problems. And don't say oh, we need this problem solved, here's $1 billion to go figure out and solve this problem. No. But do the X Prize thing. Say, if you solve this problem and the solution does this, checks all the boxes, here's $1 billion or here's $100 million, and that will actually incentivize the private industry towards going and solving that problem, and it'll also prepare these industries for implementing these solutions that we need, because it's going to be tough to it's tough to come in from the outside and change an increasingly centralized, which leads to increasingly secretive and increasingly corrupt, industries. But ultimately, the stakeholders within industries have shared vision and purpose about what they're trying to achieve, and can also recognize the challenges that they're facing and what the ideal outcomes look like. And if they come together and they work together on like trying to achieve those and then putting out the challenges, that's how we can actually implement large system upgrades across industries to bring more accountability, more transparency, more efficiency, to these markets, and more competition to these markets as well.
Well, you want a competitive marketplace because that has that drives people to be successful, and the more opportunities that people have to be able to build something or develop or research, and have the freedom to do that. But when everything's gamed at the top, where only certain players get to play the game, then and that's really where we are with the state corporatist, this sort of tyrannical government. It's state run everything really in that framework. But
and we've seen with the disclosure and the hat coming off and the blinds being lifted behind US aid, we see the dark side and the insidious coercive, hypnotic, deep funding of programming reality, both in America and the world. And this is dark subsidy money too, in a lot of these industries. So with that, just watch, all of a sudden, a lot of these deceptive entities, pushing agendas that nobody asked for. The people certainly didn't ask for. These are individual missions or groups, desires to push these money master, chess master, power brokers trying to play God in geopolitics and global culture too. It's all the wool's coming off. It's been.
And you weren't surprised at all about the MAGA movement embracing MAHA. You said that there was a little bit of kind of a ripple effect or kind of a pushback, maybe reaction to it. Did you see anything significant, or are you just talking in general? You mentioned Shanahan.
It happened a couple times when Bobby announced he was a Democrat, running as a Democrat. People were like, oh no, the Democrats are the worst. And then it was he's running independent. It's like, oh, you can never win as an independent. And then it was okay, now I'm picking Nicole Shanahan as my Nicole Shanahan. Who's Nicole Shanahan? That's a terrible vice president pick. And it's I'm out. And at each one of these milestones, they would be, I'm out. And then you're endorsing Trump. I'm out of here. You betrayed us again. So it's individuals are going to have take their own assumptions. They're going to make their own judgments, and just give people a little bit of time, because first reactions to things can be very emotional and oftentimes egoic. So just take a moment. And this is what I watched over the course of it. I had someone was I'm out of here after Shanahan pick. And then it was a week later, she's man, Shanahan's amazing. I'm back. I'm all in. I'm my eyes, you never left.
So yeah, and we have to give people some room to breathe, and to be able to admit that I'm wrong is a big step, and we need to be able to give people that chance and that space. Now, bringing that up, you're from Canada, you have a close tie to some power in Canada. Your brother is Justin Trudeau, and there's been talk around it becoming the 51st state. Trump flexes against Trudeau, your brother, and he flexes back, and then they come to terms and have a conversation. Now, what are your thoughts about all of that? I mean, having a family member involved in this process, are you hopeful for Canada and kind of lightening up on these mandates that have happened. I mean, Canada was very tyrannical on vaccines. It was pretty rough.
It was horrible. It was terrible. And Justin, I'm pretty sure, signed up for the first 5 years of prime minister role, not the last 5 years. But ultimately, he was he's a spokesperson for the corporation. Like, he's a front man. He's not the one who's making the decisions. He's reading a script, and which is just reflective of the state of of Canada, if you will. I am hopeful for Canada. I believe that things are going to be amazing. Everything is going to be amazing, but it's going to take some time. And with Trump jockeying, like, first recognize that my brother Justin and the Liberal Party represent the same. They're the same group as Kamala Harris and the big Democrats.
Same corporate entities.
It's the same. It's the same energy. It's the same dark, projective, like dominating fear, like rule through fear and division type energy. So, like, Trump's wants to like play ball with that. Like, fuck no. Like, this is like a threat. You guys are here. The Chinese have infiltrated Canada in in deep ways, and there's public evidence of them manipulating and just the radical secrecy under which decisions have been made, and the suppression, and then how they performed during the whole scamdemic, and and the pushing of the pharmaceuticals, and the testing, the locking down, the mandates, and how they handled the truckers. Gosh, it was on and on and on. So it was Trump, he's something else. And for him to come out with this 51st state talk, it's like, a lot of people in Canada are like, dude, let's go. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, yes, like, I would love that. Oh, yeah.
Really?
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people. Well, they recognize that the Canadian government doesn't represent the people in any way, shape, or form.
Sure.
It does not represent.
What would it take for that, though? Isn't it an extension of England still under the Queen? Isn't there?
I mean, it requires a declaration of independence, to be honest.
It would be a revolution, and
it requires a declaration of independence. Probably requires a national referendum executed by we the people and not by we the government, because the government will never investigate itself properly or remove itself from power. So there needs to be a large scale movement established, and it might not be the 51st state, but at least the 51st state is talking. Because I believe, honestly, if Canadians were presented with the opportunity to really sit with it and try and remove emotions and critically think about what governance means and what representation means, and what the values that we want to espouse as Canadians, and what are our ultimate goals. And I think the Constitution would trump the Constitution would win, as opposed to the king and the monarchy
paradigm.
and this legacy.
About the U.S. Constitution, because Canada is a different structure. For those that don't understand the structure of Canada, it's actually under the Queen or the King. I'm sorry, the King now.
It's a commonwealth, and it swears fealty to the King. It's a Westminster system of parliament. So, Justin, that people don't vote for the prime minister in Canada. You vote for the party, and the individual. You vote for basically the congressman. And in Canada, the easiest way to explain it is there is no presidential election in Canada. It's it's like a congressional election, and the party that gets the most congressmen, basically the speaker, would become the prime minister, effectively, more or less. So that's the way it works. But just like in America, that these representatives, they don't really represent the people, they represent the party. It's in Canada, it's severe. It's no longer of the people, by the people, for the people. It's of the party, by the party, for the party, and party interests and corporate interests. And and there's this wicked triangle of maybe it's four, like politicians, politicians, research groups, and media. And it's like, they worked like with corporate interference towards like, basically like manufacturing public polling awareness and sentiment to push forward like this external force. And the challenge is that people are removed from this equation. And in the pyramid of Canada, it's like the citizens are at the very bottom, next to they're just the bottom. They have no real say, into the top. So one of my missions or beliefs is that the path forward is to turn that pyramid upside down, so the people are at the top and can oversee it. And that's what blockchain technology, that's what accountable open source systems can enable. They can enable a new era of transparency, accountability, responsibility. And I think we're seeing this right now, like, this shift is taking place with Elon Musk and with Doge. Like there is, the books are opening, light is being shone into the shadows, and shadows get beaten by light every time. So that's what's going to happen. And I think ultimately that'll happen up in Canada too. But things like Canadian society and culture and politics trails the US. And I will also say it's not official, but we are the 51st state. Like we are. Like America, what happens, Canadians care more about American politics than they care about Canadian politics.
Really?
Like, oh yeah. No, yeah. Like American pop culture is like just as important as Canadian pop culture. And we're very like, harmonious. The only challenge is there's a really rough border like across, and it's very difficult, and it's very aggressive, and it's very low vibration, and it's very restrictive. And so, I personally would love to see that border be evaporated. I would love to see the U.S. dollar just gotten rid of, and I'd love to see the Canadian dollar gotten rid of. And it would be interesting to see, the reemergence of, free currencies, and that's what I like about
competing currency.
Free banking and competing currencies, and that's what I like about crypto, and because it's basically a free currencies market, and there's all sorts of different choice, and you can choose. And the thing is, I was born a Canadian, I was born to use the U.S. dollar. You were born American, you were born to use the U.S. dollar. Well, guess what? Things have changed now. You can now choose. You can still use it, and you might be forced to pay taxes in it if you choose to pay taxes. But you're going to. You have the choice. You can now Bitcoin, Dogecoin, meme coins, gold, silver, whatever. There's options, and that's what I think. Ultimately, the solution is moving away from diktats and dictates. Requiring everybody to do the same thing because that's just the way, it's for the greater good. BS nonsense, that kind of rhetoric, and increasing competition. And and I will say, Ron Paul was one of my greatest mentors. I had the great pleasure of meeting Dr. Paul at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville last year. He signed the back of a Kennedy button. He's he likes Bobby, and
That's great.
and the lessons, people realize, Dr. Paul, man, he's been a dad to a lot of us. He taught a lot of us so much that
Godfather
otherwise
of MAGA, really.
And he's and more than mega. It's he's of libertarianism, of
human rights,
challenging,
natural law, everything. Yeah,
of challenging, he
was minimized. Remember in the Republican debates, it was so exciting that he would have 3 minutes. Everybody would have 4 times as much time as him, but he would eviscerate the Republicans. Nobody remembers any of those Republicans from the 2008 campaign. They barely even remember McCain, but Ron Paul was not invited. He raised more money than anybody else in the Republican Party. And then we had a shadow convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul for Ron Paul called the Rally for the Republic. It was absolutely, I mean, the man, ignited a revolution. But when he announced that he was going to run, he said, nobody's going to be interested in what I have to say. And he was totally wrong about that. I will say that's the one time that Ron Paul was wrong. The rest of the time he's been right. And now it's all coming to pass and people are starting to wake up and see it. It's unbelievable.
And just the heart energy, the grassroots, like, like he had I've studied a lot of he had good people around him, but like ultimately, like there was so much decentralized grassroots support, spontaneous self-organization. Like it was like, like people say that about Barack Obama, like bullshit. Like,
no, that was corporate. That was totally manufactured, CIA.
Corporate, manufactured, and they had like, they had really smart systems in place. But as Ron Paul, like, we didn't, man. We were just, everyone was just like kind of learning. I mean, I was young at that time. This was the 2008, so I was like 20, 24.
Yeah, we were all young back then. That was a great time. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and we learned so much from him. And then now Rand, and just see like, Rand standing up, and like he and Bobby are very like, I feel like they're very aligned. And the fact that like Kennedy is so close with like, Thomas Massey and Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and like, the values there. It's cool that we have like some differences, but at the core there is like a shared purpose and
Elon's been red pilling the whole time, and a lot of it I think is I'm sure he's reading books and watching tons of videos and starting to wake up to the kind of this message. Let me ask you, when you mentioned about Canada becoming a 51st state and the people there, and maybe this is too getting in the weeds, but is it something that would happen for all of Canada? Are there segments of Canada that would say no? And would it be a 51st state, or would it be people keeping the sovereignty of their particular areas, like Saskatchewan, or you have Quebec, or you have, each one of those would become kind of a sovereign state in a sense?
Honestly, like, there could, I would say, like, the simplest solution is like, let's simple. Come together, decide on, Doug Ford said this, like Fortress AmCam, like, America, Canada, North America, Fortress North America. Like, let's like the economic union, creating this block, if you will. And trust me. And
is Trump privy to things? Because when people, when he came up with this idea, then he talked about Greenland, and then he announced the Gulf of America over Gulf of Mexico and all of that. People are like, what is he talking about? Why is there there must have been more to it with Canada.
Okay. This is right? I mean, this is like, in my opinion, this is a big long game. And this was like, remember there was the SPP partnership back in the day, the Security Prosperity
Partnership in Canada that wants to be a part of the United States.
There was there was the North American Union talks that like Stephen Harper and Vicente Fox and Calderon and Bush were all engaged in. And I think we're starting to see that plan, which was initially like, discussed back in late 2000s, which was something that I was like vehemently against. But like, given the state of everything, it's like, no, let's open and look at this, because with, with privacy preserving technology, if we can leverage technology to actually reduce the giant surveillance state and bring more accountability and transparency and upgrade our systems and build new models that make the existing models obsolete, we should definitely look and explore this and design this. And ultimately, Canada, like, we have provinces, just like America has states, and the provinces have sovereignty over, or like control over the things. You can literally get rid of the federal government in Canada, boom, just gone. Like, and it wouldn't like just save a whole bunch of money, and a lot of people would be out of jobs, but we could figure that out. and then with like and if there's like a North American like discussion and a way to preserve the Canadian flag and the Canadian identity, because like for some people that's really important, and that will be important. But you look at it from Trump's point of view, it's like it's the I would say this is the art of the deal, and it starts with you come at him with like bah. Your first offer is like you lowball, like, and you see how they're going to react. And how did they react? They like got defensive, and like now Canada's busy fear mongering right now, of like we're going to war with America, and like get ready, like sharpen your pitchforks, guys, sharpen your hockey blades. You're gonna
That's what the media is doing. That's what the politicians are doing. They're
seeing some of that percolate through social media, as opposed to like, hey, like let's stop the fentanyl getting across the border. Like, let's address some of these things. And, but I also know like Trump has issues with the fact that Canada has been co-opted by China.
Wouldn't Canada want to stop the fentanyl coming into their country? I mean, overall, rather than just stopping it from coming over the border in the United States?
I think a lot of it's produced in Canada too, though. And
really?
I don't know. I'm not a fentanyl kind of expert. So like, other than I know it's a horrible substance, and it needs to be removed, because I've lost people very close to me due to fentanyl poisoning, and it is a horrible substance, and we need to stop it. And there should be no question about doing whatever we can to do it. The challenge is Canada's like just defund it. They've just been punching down. Canada's been, it's frustrating. But Canadian heart, Canadian salute, like resolve the humanity. The power is there. The resources, a beautiful land. It's incredible. We just need to we just need some Doge. Doge can come up to Canada, clean this shit up, investigate, look into the contracts, look into all the testing, look into the quarantine camps, look into the vaccine research, the vaccine rollouts, look in and understand the systemic corruption, look at the war in Ukraine, look at the books behind the trucker movement, look at where all the dollars have been going towards supporting and seeding and infiltrating media organizations. Like look at there's a bunch of crap. We got to the first step is not necessarily going and taking the money back. It's like what's happening in America. Doge, first thing you do, you cut off the money flows. Stop giving more. Stop feeding it more. Because as long as you keep feeding it, it's just you're basically endorsing it. So stop it. So just cut it off. Cut it off. That's the same thing about government. Like, you guys aren't going to work in Ottawa. You've prorogued the government. You cut off. No more payment for any of you MPs. Like, that's what the thing. We could actually just get rid of the federal government in Canada and work it into Jeffrey Tucker talked about it. I think he's like, I'm like, how do you feel about Canada joining America? He was like, America doesn't want to expand. But I'm like, what do the Canadians want? He's like, well, if it was under the 10th Amendment, or I think that was maybe the one.
10th Amendment. There would be a state, a sovereign state.
If the 10th Amendment was held up, great. That makes sense. And that's that's the balkanization of Canada too. It's you've got, British Columbia, then you've got Alberta, Saskatchewan, or you've got British Columbia and the north up to kind of Alaska, and then you've got the Alberta, and then there's prairie land, and there's northern Ontario and prairie land, and then southern Ontario is its own big block because it's it's different, and then Quebec is its own, and then basically Atlantia, which is the Atlantic provinces. Those would kind of represent, I would say, kind of these larger states, and they have the infrastructure and they have the systems. It wouldn't be that hard. And what the question is, this is the question that I would like to ask Pierre Poilievre and my brother, and I would like them to say, what does the federal government do that adds value? What is it that you're actually doing? Just tell me. Name one thing that you've done that is actually helping Canada advance.
And on the flip side, what is it doing that causes harm?
Or climate change. you're sending money to Ukraine, not sending soldiers. We're not fighting a war there. Are you protecting our borders? Not protecting our borders. You're like you're implementing new taxes at a federal level. You've like we have this gigantic government system that literally can be replaced. Like 95% of these workers. There's no economic value that they're adding. A lot of them can be replaced by just like rethinking efficient design systems. And it's like, and honestly, like Elon Musk offering buyouts to the American, like, offering buyouts to government workers, like that's actually like a pretty damn good solution. I mean, 8 months is kind of that's not a long time, especially considering like, there is an integration period. In Switzerland, it's 18 months. It's like when you get fired from a job, you have 18 months severance to find a new job, and the government will pay 80% of that. And guess how many people like use up to the 18 month? I would say it's less than 1%.
Really?
People don't people want to work. Then the Swiss are incredible. They just want to work. They don't the idea of like, oh, I could just sit around and do nothing. Like that's like sounds like hell to a Swiss person. No. I want to add value. I want to live a beautiful, healthy, like, Swiss know what's up, and they also have the referendum system and direct democracy over there, which is very interesting, which I think both Canada and America could benefit from, of enabling processes for referendums at scale. The European Union has referendums.
You mentioned your brother. You have a message for him. Does he listen to you? Do you guys ever have a conversation about the issues?
We haven't in a long time. Okay. And before, when we were, discussing more, it was
it's a brother.
Earmuffs.
That's
like,
how
you start talking.
Yeah.
You start talking about certain things. It's like there's subjects like, back in the day, 9/11. It's like, well, explain Building 7. It's like, what buildings? Just what do you think? Does that not seem a little bit off to you? That a 47
falls on its own without being hit,
falls by itself, and like and it was reported collapsed like on live TV.
Said let's pull Building 7 in a video. Yeah.
Does it make sense that there was no plane in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania? Like, why is there no footage of a giant airliner crashing into the Pentagon? It's like, look at all the footage we have of like, that plane, alleged plane crashing in Philadelphia, or that helicopter. Like there's so much footage. Why do they just like? Anyways, though, like simply asking those kind of questions, which challenge the big myth, and this is a thing. It's like it's so disruptive that it fucks with your whole world and worldview. So it's just like, give me the blue pill. No. Give me the blue pill, because like I take the blue pill, I get the girl with the red dress, and it's like, and so it's like, I'm going to operate in this. It's going to be messed up, and it's going to be, but I'm going to take the blue pill and play this role because, like, this is, and because you get the glitz and the glamour and all this different stuff until like you're called to basically become a spokesperson and a salesperson for an insidious industry seeking to inject our 8-month-old babies with experimental mRNA magnetic goo. Like, what? This is what you signed up for? Like, you can't, in Canada, you can't advertise drugs on television. So guess what they figured out how to do with the scamdemic is they turned our public officials into salespeople and promoters of pharmaceutical experimental gene therapy goo. Most of it was saline, in my opinion, but
I didn't even know that you can't advertise drugs in Canada. That's actually that's very strange to the American culture, because that's the industry. That's how these departments that Kennedy's taking over are going to have grown so much, because all the money that's bundled into.
And we'll see with Bobby too. Like, he said he wants to ban pharmaceutical advertising on television. It'll probably be the same thing that happens in Canada.
Well, you need freedom of speech at the same time. The market should be allowed to operate.
I'll just explain quickly how pharmaceutical advertising in Canada works. You can't say, like, are you suffering from limp dick syndrome, and like, here's Viagra, which will give you, you know, blood pressure into your nether regions, and it has these side effects, blah, 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 blah. Get your Viagra today. No, they don't do that. Instead, they show like old people holding hands and like, running around and like, just have this like, kind of sensational go nowhere advertisement. And at the end, it says, ask your doctor about Viagra. Like, so they're still there. They're still going to advertise, but it's not like, as in your face, like, are you fat? Are you a fatty? Like, do you want to lose the weight? Get some Ozempic, because Ozempic will trick your body into thinking it's whatever it does that, like, you'll just eat less. But Ozempic is the solution, and side effects include blah, 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 blah. They just don't do the whole side effects thing. They say, ask your doctor about this. Anyways, that's the way it works in Canada, and it still enables the pharmaceutical companies to advertise to base, and by putting your money and advertising into the system, you're buying favors, you're buying friends, you're buying influence within the system. So like, it's like the corporate capture. That's just one example of corporate capture, and it will still continue in many ways. But we can change these things, and they will change. And like, where there's energy, like, it will go. Energy goes where energy flows. And I would say, let's stop focusing on what we don't want and start focusing on what we do want. Focus on, like, set intentions about what we do want, about what the ideal outcome solutions look like, as opposed to saying what we don't want. We don't want a CBDC. Well, what do we want? We want free banking. We want competing currencies. We want privacy of transactions. We want, like, there's many things on those lines. But Kurt, I just want to say, like, thank you so much. I've got to continue because I'm on a cross country journey right now.
Yeah, what are you doing now? What project are you working on? What's happening?
My community would really not like it if I didn't explain what I'm up to. So we've got Club MAHA. We've got a podcast every Wednesday at 9 p.m. with Ian Carroll and Dustin Stockton.
Oh, wow.
Ian, one of the most amazing people. And Dustin Stockton's one of the founders of the MAHA movement. So we've got MAHA, we've got MAHA, and we've got Ian, who's like pretty hardcore MAHA, internet shit disturber, investigative journalist extraordinaire. And so we just have, like, really open talks about all sorts of different things every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time on X. We'll be adding more platforms as well. Like, last week we had 100,000 live viewers. It was,
that's amazing.
it's like you're just going out there and doing. We have the MAHA token. If you go to clubmaha.com, you can get sweet MAHA merch and learn more about what we're up to. We've got a token supporting this. I have a long history in crypto. Never actually launched a token until until this fall, recognizing that someone was going to be launching a MAHA token, and I wanted to be a good steward for it. And so we launched it, and it actually facilitated the ability, because once the campaign ended, once he moved to Trump, there was there's kind of an energy vacuum, and there were a lot of good people that still wanted to keep continued. So, leveraging the token and the this decentralized ecosystem, we were to continue supporting grassroots efforts and continued out there kind of campaigning and raising the MAHA awareness. Like, through the election, we got the W, and the intention is to achieve this mission of making America healthy again. And that doesn't just mean like stopping, I don't know, fighting for safe vaccines or seeing safe vaccines and safety and research, but like the fluoride in the water, the air, the chemtrails in the air, the soil health, the environmental health, recognizing it's not just about the health of the people, it's about the health of the planet as well. Environmental stewardship is very important. Financial health is also important. Like, health is wealth. The more people that we can get, free from the addictive pharmaceutical sick care system, and start regenerating health and focusing on ideal health outcomes and seeking cures and radical improvement in societal health, the stronger Canada, America, the world will be, frankly. And also the efforts of America will, America is still the world leader, and people are watching them. So watch, you clean up the CDC, you clean up the FDA, you clean up NIH, like those like all of a sudden we're going to see the rise of or the proliferation of these values and these knowledge and these concepts around health and well-being percolate out, and I think the rising tide will float all ships. So so clubmaha.com, check it out. You can follow me on X at Kyle Kemper, and follow us, join Club Maha on X, and stay free. Let's grow.
Kyle Kemper, thank you for joining me today on the Kurt Wallace Show at Rand Paul Review. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Kurt. Really appreciate it.
Genius.